Texas's workforce. They teach us. They inspire us. They take us to new heights. They make the things that make our lives better and open doors to a brighter tomorrow. These aren't just workers doing a job. They're people doing a job well. They keep Texas running, and that matters to you, and it matters to us. We're Texas Mutual Insurance Company, the state's #1 workers' comp provider. Every day, we're on the job with 1.5 million Texas workers. And every day, we have the same goal, getting each and every one of them home safe to their families. With safety resources, training technologies, dividends, and a total commitment to service, Texas Mutual is changing the way workers' comp works for you.
All right, welcome in everybody to what is going to be, I think, an enjoyable next hour here when we dig deep into the history of Texas professional soccer and, of course, what I think are the two greatest moments in professional soccer history here in the state of Texas. With us today, and we'll start with the guy who is already the big winner because he's in Miami, Florida, while we're freezing here in the state of Texas. He is Paul Dalglish. Paul, how are you? Give us a little update on how things are going with you in Miami, Florida right now.
Yeah, it's a little bit. Well, good to see you. Kind of good to see you, mate. But I'm sure we're going to enjoy this. It's a different experience. Obviously, I've got friends back home. Whereas here, the weather, we can go to the beach, we can go running up and down the boardwalk. It's not been as bad as it could have been. We've kind of got away with it a little in Miami. I'm quite lucky in that way. And then we've just been, still not, but we've been working from home, just trying to build the roster, and then looking forward to our pre-season starting on Monday.
Yeah, Paul's done a lot of tremendous coaching work with Miami FC and around the country. And Eddie Robertson here in Houston, color analyst for the Houston Dynamo. Both of these men played a pivotal part in winning MLS Cups, and I'm really looking forward to digging into it with you guys. And I've refreshed my memory on these great games and the great contributions you both had. Eddie, how are you?
I'm fantastic, Glenn. Thank you for asking. It's just preparing for the cold snap that we're going to have. It's Monday and Tuesday. We're looking at weather in Houston. It hadn't been this cold in over 40 years, so we might even get an actual accumulation of snow on the Gulf of Mexico. It's going to be interesting.
I thought Paul was going to invite us down so we could take that direct flight out of Houston to get down there to the warm weather, but maybe we'll get that invite by the end of this hour. All right, so
no. You don't get to do that. You're supposed to invite me to the Virgin Islands when you go and visit your family, but you didn't invite me. I'm mad at you. I still want to talk about that.
Well, we can do it all. We can do it all. All right. So let me just, what I think is important for this conversation with Paul and Eddie is to provide a little context as to what was going on in Houston, Texas from a professional soccer standpoint prior to the gift that was the Houston Dynamo in the form of the San Jose earthquake. So professional soccer was in the state of Texas all the way back to the 60s. A lot of people don't even know that. Went through the 70s. The last outdoor team that competed was in the 80s. The 90s was the era of more indoor soccer. And then all of a sudden, 10 years after Major League Soccer started, there was a lot of desire for Houston, which was proving itself out with international matches, and the strength of the youth community and the adult community to get professional soccer here. So in comes the gift of the San Jose earthquakes, which at the time, in my very humble opinion as a commentator and journalist and around the league, was the best team in the league. And I'm not sure that Houston really realized at the time what it was inheriting. In a city with people from all over the world, it was ripe for when this team came. The Dynamo would open their first game up ever, 25,000, 30,000 people. Brian Ching, 4 goals. a 5-1 win. This is 2006, so they get off to the amazing start. And I remember being in the TV booth that night, just please score a bunch of goals and get a win and make sure this is entertaining. The audience was there. So, as we all know, MLS was a little bit different back then. 12 teams, there's now 27 teams, which is, it's mind-blowing to even think about. So 2006 was an amazing year in Houston, Texas, with the Houston Dynamo coming to town. And I'll start with you, Eddie. Just, I remember when you guys came here and Dom Kinnear, Wade Barrett on the steps of City Hall, getting welcomed to the city, and everybody looked stunned. It was a giant relocation. So maybe just touch on the relocation, the challenges that provided, and maybe the motivation it provided.
Well, there were rumors going around the locker room that entire season of 2005 that San Jose may not exist. And we saw my rookie year after 2001, we lost Miami and Tampa. The league went down to 10 teams, and we weren't sure the league was going to survive. A couple of owners stepped up, the Hunt family, the Anschutz group, and a couple others to make sure that Major League Soccer stuck around. So fast forward to 2005, I think easily in the argument for one of the best teams in the history of the league was that 2005 San Jose team. I was fortunate to be a part of it. But when you look at some of the players, just that group and the roster that was so small back then. Now you've got 30 guys on the team. My rookie year, you had 18. That was the max. 16 traveled. So 2005 into the season, we won the Supporters Shield that year. Landon Donovan did what Landon Donovan does to us in the playoffs, and we got knocked out early. And then we found out we're moving to Houston. And credit to our ownership group, the Anschutz group. They took everyone that had a family. If you were married or whatever, had kids, they flew everybody down to Houston for a weekend early January so that they could look around, find a place to live, meet a real estate agent, and so that we could be settled once we came. And I think that was one of the biggest contributors to our success, is that we were settled before preseason started. There were no question marks. We knew where we were training. We knew where we were playing. Was it ideal? No. But that's the team that Dominic Kinnear built and Frank Yallop built in San Jose. Was just a bunch of scruffy, blue collar, hardcore, kick you in the teeth, score some goals while we're doing it team. And then, we get to Houston and we add some decent players like Paul Dalglish to the mix, and we were off and running.
So, Paul, I would say to you, you came in the summer, and to me, I remember saying it on the air, this was an incredible pivotal signing based on what you brought to the team with your movement, your mobility, an instant relationship with Brian Ching. So we always talk about the great Dominic Kinnear Houston Dynamo locker rooms. How welcoming was it for you after your 4-day trial? You get the contract, and kind of take us into coming into this group and being integrated into it.
Yeah, it was funny. It was funny because I remember it was John Spencer was the coach, and his brother-in-law is and I was coming home from training at Hibs, and I was really happy. And I go saying, hey, the Dynamo are looking for a forward for the second part of the season. I was playing as a winger really at the time. And they said, would you fancy coming over? And I said, well, yeah, let me go and see. So I went to speak to my manager, came over, trained a few days. And I remember seeing the picture, Glenn. I've come from Edinburgh in Scotland, and it's like what Houston is now, the weather. And we used to they gave me the shirtless top. And you don't know where the white sleeve ended and my arm started. I was that white in the pictures from the first day. And I can remember going, oh my God, how do people play football in it? And the minute training stopped, I was under the shade, I was pouring. I've never, ever played football in that heat before. It was a culture shock for me. But it was straight away, it was a different locker room to what I'd been used to. There was a lot of veterans in the locker room. And you'd have people like Eddie can tell you, there's people like Pat Onstad, who would sit and just read his book and drink a cup of coffee with Wade Barrett and Brian Mullen, and that was a sensible corner of the locker room. And then you had the idiots corner, which Stuart Holden and a few of the other ones. And it was it was such a contrast of personalities in the locker room. And I remember coming in, and I'm used to, your socks and throwing socks at each other, and taking the having the humour. I remember one of the guys walked in the locker room, and he went, "Nice shoes, man." And I went, "What's wrong with my shoes?" Straight away, I thought he was saying my shoes weren't good, but he was actually being nice. So it was a complete culture shock to me from a British locker room going into people being nice to you. But it was, that team. I just remember, Glenn, just to get to the point. I remember there was a lot of people that found it hard in Houston in the first year, and I came over so excited. And you'd hear people going, "Oh, the weather here, the weather wasn't like this." And it used to really annoy me because I was so excited to be in Houston. But what I can tell you was, he'll tell you, we weren't the best friends. I struck up a relationship with Chingy really well off the field, and then it translated onto the field. But we weren't actually the best friends. But what we were absolutely united in the same direction to try and achieve success. And we had a team of players that I remember Wade Barrett being there before. And as Eddie said, it was an amazing team, the San Jose team. Wade Barrett sat us down away from the coaching staff and just said, "Right, this is what we do. We know now. Now listen, we're in the playoffs now. Now it's time to take care of the likes of Eddie Weibel, Ricardo Clark, and Brad Davis, Brian." It was just a calmness and just that we've been here before, we know what to do, and it was almost like we knew we were going to win it. We knew we were going to win it from the minute we made the playoffs.
Eddie, I want you to comment on Paul and the effect he had on the team, because now all of a sudden the Dynamo had even a bigger threat behind the defense. I remember that Western Conference final. Paul gets 2 goals, man of the match. He's playing off Brian Ching beautifully, spectacular in front of a huge crowd. Just, from your perspective, being on the team with Paul, into the influence that he had with his style of play, because to me it was significant in the title.
It was, because if you go back to the 01, 02, 03 seasons when Landon Donovan was playing alongside Brian Ching, and that relationship they had, Landon was the pace to get in behind. Brian was that traditional number 9 that held up the ball. The one thing that I will say about Paul that's different, and he's talking about the locker room, and I like giving him crap. I mean, that's just what we do. It's started on day one, but he brought fun to the locker room, right? Just another personality into the locker room to lighten things up, to lighten the mood up. Got along with everybody, but like he just said, that relationship that he developed with Brian was unreal. It was so important that we finally had that player that wasn't running from deep in midfield like a Stuart Holden or a Dwayne D. Rosario, that we had another forward alongside of Brian that could get in behind with their pace and finish. And that's what Paul brought, and that was huge. And it was just a little bit more competition in that position up front, and he just fit into the group immediately when he came in. Yeah, it was a little bit brash, and some of the guys didn't like it. The Pat Onstads, the Brian Mullins, who weren't really into that sense of humor, but everybody loved him, right? Everybody loved him from the moment he got there, and he fit right in right away. And obviously his quality and his goal scoring ability was part of the reason that we were so successful.
People back to this. The Houston Dynamo were playing on the campus of the University of Houston at U of H in hopes of eventually getting into their own stadium. The atmosphere was incredible. The environment in Houston, and I can tell you guys this prior to you arriving, the desire to have professional soccer back. I mean, it was just bubbling. It was ready to go over the size of the puck. It was through the roof.
You guys hear me? Because I think I lost you.
No, we hear you. And the city was really, really primed for this.
Hello.
And the relationship was remarkable between the players and the fans. Paul, if you can just maybe talk a little bit about just the amazing relationship, the intimacy with the fans, because you guys had to literally walk out amongst them, get onto the field, get to the locker room, get to your cars. And I do believe that there was still a sense, like when I was playing in the 80s, that you guys were kind of fighting
I
for
don't
the
know if you
game
guys
and
can hear me,
selling the
but
game.
everything is frozen.
Yeah, no, it was a family. You know, I think, you know, Stuart in year one, his like being a local kid, and his family had a tailgate in the car park outside the stadium. So when you were walking in, they'd already where we parked the car. So you go in, and then you knew it was almost like it was. It created a real family atmosphere. There was a kid there as well who became very close with, who went through some terrible health issues, called Evan, that was always stood outside waiting for you. And it was a real family atmosphere when you went to the game. You knew you were representing something more than just yourself. You knew that you were representing a community because you got that feel when you were outside. And it was awesome. It was awesome to I've been lucky enough to be in and around soccer for a while now. But I'm telling you now, that atmosphere at Robertson takes some beating. You know, I've been at some other stadiums that might be bigger, there might be more modern stadiums, but that Western Conference final, everyone's got the towels. I think they gave out Gatorade towels before the game, and they're swinging the towels around, and the noise. I mean, because it was the first year, the excitement, it was like playing back home in Europe. It was a game really that was in a European atmosphere. And now you see it at Atlanta, you see it at Seattle, but then that really was the first time I went, this is special.
Eddie, how about you? Just talking about, you know, the intensity of the relationship between the fans and the players, and to kind of tag on to what Paul just said. You know, you guys were still trying to pioneer the game in a lot of ways for your generation.
Yeah, and I lost you guys. I had to refresh, so I just caught the end of what Paul just said. But I was actually going to plug in and piggyback on that. One of the things that I think made this team so endeared to the city and the fans was the relationship that we had with them. Because nowadays, it's actually mandated. After games, there are a certain number of players that have to go somewhere and that have to sign autographs. It was up to us, and everybody would go out and sign autographs, and they would spend as long as they had to signing autographs for the fans. And as Paul was talking about, you know, young Evan, who's I still keep in touch with, and he's had probably 50 surgeries now, but he's still sticking to it, and he's fighting like a champ. He's had all kinds of health issues, but you create personal relationships with people. So it's not necessarily just I love the Houston Dynamo. It's I love Paul Dalglish. I love Eddie Robinson. I love Brian Ching. I love Dwayne DiRosario. I want to see those guys succeed because we took the time and we were genuine and we spent time out in the community. We didn't get paid to go out in the community on a Friday night and be away from our families and spend time at a soccer tournament. We did that because we wanted to do that, because we enjoyed the community. We appreciated the support that they've given us. And that's something that's changed a lot with professional soccer in the United States. And it's part of the process. It is what it is. But I think a big part of the reason that we had so many genuine, hardcore fans is because of the way that us as players and individuals treating them as human beings. And, you know, ask about how's your wife, how's your son, how's your daughter, how was the game this weekend? You know, you said you guys were going to the beach. How was your trip? And all of these different things, these little things that made people feel special. We did that. And this was before social media was huge. So you didn't really communicate a lot on Twitter or Instagram, that kind of stuff. I mean, this is 15 years ago. So it was interaction face to face.
Yeah. The organic nature of what you guys did and the character of the guys on the team, unsurpassed. I mean, I don't think any question. And the time everybody took. I mean, I remember events you guys would help me with, charity events, and nobody would say no. I mean, it was pretty spectacular. All right, so I'm going to move this along now. 2006, you beat Chivas USA. That was a pretty grueling series, 3-2. And then it's on to Colorado in the Western Conference Final. This is an incredible match. Big crowd again. Paul Dalglish in the 10th and 21st. So, I mean, you're off to the type of start you want. You land the first two blows. Paul, just, take us back to that night. It was a fantastic night for you personally, for the team. But that relationship we talked about with you and Brian Ching working off each other really, really came to life on that evening.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it was, it was just going back to the relationship with Brian Ching. As much as we were friends, it was I think I was just the right piece at the right time, because I didn't like coming short and getting the ball between the lines. I like running behind. Brian Ching liked to stay central. But that worked because Dwayne De Rosario played as a number 10 underneath. So there was no real room to come underneath. So by me running in behind, that created the space for Dero to play in. And Ching, so it was almost, I knew Ching wanted to stay central. And Ching was better than me, right? And I was completely comfortable with that. But what I knew is if I could run the channels for Chingy and we could keep Chingy central, then we'd have more chance of winning the game. So I just tried to get into the space where the team needed me. And I had a really, as much as people talk about the relationship with Chingy, I had a really good relationship with Weibel as well. When Weibel got the ball and just making that running behind into the corner. And he was a great passer, Weibel, very underrated on the ball, Weibel, at playing those balls in. So it was just obviously that night I got the rewards for running in behind. But it just fit. It just fit. And it was an incredible night. I can't really explain it. Obviously, the game against Chivas was really hard. I remember it was one of the first daytime games that I'd played in California away from home. And I don't have much hair, Glenn. And I remember just the sun bouncing off the felt absolutely. I don't know if you'd noticed, Glenn, but I just felt absolutely drained. Right? I did it, and it wasn't that hot, but just playing in the California sun, it was hot. And then Chingy got one right at the end, I think, to get us back into it. And then that gave us something to attack them with when they came back. But the game against Colorado, we actually went 1-0 down. They got a penalty early doors. And I just remember looking around the team. There was no panic, Glenn. It was a load of veterans that just went, we're not letting these people down. And it was almost like, well, okay, if we need to do it the hard way, we'll do it the hard way. And it was just that mindset that the team had. It was, we were never letting anybody down that night. Never.
And Paul's two goals would put the Dynamo up 2-1 after that first early goal. So that was the Colorado game. So the Dynamo would beat Chivas 3-2 on aggregate. Colorado Western Conference Final. They would win 3-1. 2 from Paul, 1 from Brian Mullen. So it's now, Eddie, on to the MLS Cup in 2006. And it's an MLS Cup that, the city's going wild now. You got Jim McIngvale renting buses and busing. There's 5,000 to 7,000 people going up to Dallas. By the way, it's in Frisco, at the home of your rivals. So it's a little bit of a gut punch to FC Dallas fans, right? The place turns orange. Just start me off before we get into the game, Eddie, just about the excitement leading into it and kind of from your perspective.
Well, I mean, I thought it was absolutely amazing because coming from San Jose and even the success that we had in San Jose, I mean, from 2001 winning MLS Cup, 2003 winning an MLS Cup, 2005 winning the Supporter Shield, it still felt like we were just second-class citizens in that city. There were fans, but it wasn't the same. And then you find out that Mattress Mac, that Jim McIngvale is not only bussing people up, but he's catering food before the game for 2,000 people. And we're like, holy smokes. So when we walk out for warm-up, seeing the stadium was insane. And we know we're playing against the New England Revolution, who, man, Steve Nicol has built a really good team that's been really successful. They're kind of like the Buffalo Bills of the 90s. They just couldn't, unfortunately, win a final. But just the build up to it and the appreciation from the fan base, from the media, it was different than what it was in San Jose. We just weren't appreciated until they found out we were leaving, and everybody's like, no, too late. Sorry, we're gone. And then when we get here, everybody's so appreciative to have us here. It's something different. It's not professional football or basketball or baseball. This is something new, and there's a fan base that was already here for that. They just didn't have a way to, attend those kind of games because most of them were fans of Hispanic teams, whether it was in Mexico, Costa Rica, Honduras, El Salvador. Now you've got an opportunity to see it live in person, and it's a successful team. So you go back to just the way that we treated the community and the way that, we played as a team. We were blue collar, so people could appreciate it and relate to us.
Yeah, and for a large part, apart from a couple of players, including a Scotsman named Paul Dalglish, it was an American-based team in a very, very diverse city. Paul, do you want to tag on to what Eddie just said about just the build-up to the 2006 MLS Cup?
And it was funny. I missed something out on the last game. Then I'll go on to that. Do you remember, Eddie, when the head coach of Colorado in the build-up to the game called us predictable? Said, "Oh, the Dynamo, we'll beat the Dynamo. They're so predictable. We know exactly what they're going to do." Do you remember in the build-up?
Yeah, well,
and then
we are. I mean,
the game.
We were.
Yeah.
We were predictable. You knew what we were going to do, but you couldn't stop us. Because at the end of the day, you could look at what we were doing, but you're not going to outwork us. You're not going to outfight us. We're going to end up kicking your ass. So that just fired us up. That's.
I think that ties in, Eddie, to what you were saying there about, that it was an American / it was an American-based team. And I hear people say, if you want to, we need to sign players from Mexico, or we need to sign players from Honduras, or we need to sign players from there. It doesn't matter where you're from. It matters that you connect with the team, and the team think that you have a connection with the supporters. And if you look at the greatest Dynamo, Andy Rosario's from Toronto. Brian Ching's from Hawaii. Brad Davis is from St. Louis. You start going through the legends of the Dynamo, right? And it was, I think they talk about, and I'm a big Liverpool fan, and Shankly spoke about the Holy Trinity, when the manager, the fans, and the team has a connection. That's the Holy Trinity. And we had that. Don was the right coach, that angry on the sideline time coach. We played the right type of football, because the thing about it, and the thing that mistake people make, Glenn, in football in America, is they talk about, there's a big Hispanic community here and the soccer fans. What I found is, and I can relate to that as a European soccer fan, I love Liverpool, right? I'm not going to turn up at a game because there's an English player playing for the team. I'm going to turn up to support the team, because that's football. And when the more educated fans are, the more they need to connect with the team. And I think that the city connected with the team, and the team connected with the city, and that's why Mattress Mac did what he did. Just to go on, Glenn, this was like, I'd played my whole career, Glenn, and just to go to the final, and when I kind of watch finals now, I think back to this final. I'd played my whole career and I didn't have a trophy to show for it, right? And I remember I'm in a final, and obviously I've done really well in the game before. My mum and dad are flying out. I picked my mum and dad up from the airport, and I don't know if you remember, the media around the big game, like there's Puma send you a bag of goodies, or Adidas send you a bag of goodies, and they put it in your room. You've got all the media stuff, you've got the gift packs, and then the training the day before you train, and there's media there. And I'm telling you, Glenn, I wasn't a great player, right? But I was an honest player. And I had the best day of training the day before the game. The day before the game, I've had the best day of training, and I am flying. I think we played a little game across the pitch. I scored 2, and I'm going into the game. My mum and dad are there. I'm so confident. We turn up at the game, Glenn, and I felt flat. I don't know why. I turn up, and it's amazing how you can do all the best preparation that you can. You can feel in the best frame of mind, but you can turn up to a final. And maybe because it was my first one and all the excitement of it, I was flat. I was flat, and I remember going out for warm-ups, and I was going, I'm a yard off here. And then, but this was a team that, you look at Brian Ching, you look at Stuart Holden, you look at, Eddie, you look at Brian Mullen, Di Rosario, there was always someone that could get us out of the trouble. And even when we went 1-0 down, straight from the kickoff, oh my God, it was amazing because I'd been taken off. And I remember they scored and Taylor Twellman's ran all the way along our fans. And he's shouting up to their fans. It was a little tiny, I think it was one rower, New England fans over at the furthest away from the goal. And he ran all the way along our fans and started celebrating with their fans. And I was like, oh no, my mum and dad have flown over. It's all over. From the kickoff, goes to Mullen, cross in, Ching, wow, 1-1. And then we were never losing that game in England.
Well,
So let me just,
I'm telling you,
Eddie,
let me
before
just
you go,
real
just
quick.
let me reboot everybody. The MLS Cup final, as Paul said, and so beautifully took us through it, it's into extra time. Twellman scores. A minute later, Brian Mullen's cross is deflected, which made it even more difficult for Brian Ching, I think, or maybe it helped him. I don't know. But he pounds in the header. We go into penalty kicks. Kelly Gray, Stuart Holden, Dwayne De Rosario, Brian Ching connect. And Noonan and Heaps miss for New England. So I just want to go through, to you, Eddie, I want to go through the Dynamo lineup that day. So the starting lineup was Pat Onstad in goal, Craig Weibel, because I want to give a shout out to everybody. Interesting things happens where Adrian Serio, who's been partnering you, Ricardo Clark can't play in this game. This is a huge challenge. Serio gets bumped into midfield. Cochran comes in. You can tell me in a minute. Barrett on the left. And then you got Dwayne De Rosario pulling the strings with Davis and Mullen in midfield. And then Ching and Dalglish up front. So just tell me a little bit about, Ryan Cochran coming into the lineup, Rico not being able to play, and how you guys handled that.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Ricardo Clark being out was my fault. I believe I gave a ball away in the semifinal, and Ricardo committed a foul, and he got a yellow card, and that yellow card meant that he would miss the final. And I think they actually changed the rule for that after that season. But with Ryan in there, we weren't worried. We weren't bothered. I mean, that's the thing with that team is anybody that came in, we were fine with that. And, when you look at, I think in the modern game, everybody wants to have 3 center midfielders to try to overload the midfield and dominate that area, whether it's winning second balls, whether it's possession, all of these extra things. But we were a solid 4-4-2. And the one thing that was really good about us is if you watch that, go back and watch those games. If it's whatever side the ball's on, whether it's Brian Mullen or Brad Davis on the opposite side, the weak side, they're always inside, in the middle, which always opened up space. You see how much Wade Barrett got forward and how much Craig Weibel got forward. But we struggled to score that game. And I remember that goal that Taylor Twellman scored. I mean, I have nightmares about it because Cano Smith picks up the ball in midfield. I see Taylor Twellman over my left shoulder making a run in behind me. So I step right into the space thinking, okay, if he's going to play this ball, he's going to have to play it over top and it's going to have to be perfect. He plays it, Cano Smith, and it goes right through my legs. I'm like, are you kidding me? And I turn around and watch Taylor Twellman do what Taylor Twellman does, finish it, and I'm frustrated. I'm extremely frustrated. I'm angry at myself because I knew that pass was coming. I knew where the run was going, but I couldn't stop it. It's like a defender trying to block a shot, and it goes through your legs and into the corner and beats the goalkeeper. And so the ball goes back to midfield, and the kickoff happens, and I'm literally looking at the ground because I'm so frustrated and I'm so angry and I'm so disappointed because that's just the way that I have always been and the way that our whole team was. We hated to lose, and I felt like we were going to lose. I didn't see the goal. I did not see Brian Ching score. I was looking at the ground. I was pouting and being a big baby because I didn't stop what I knew was coming. So I had to watch it on replay afterward. And, as Paul was talking about, his family coming over, my best friend from high school growing up had been in Colorado at the time, and he had a layover in Dallas. So his wife, and their 3-year-old son, he was 3 at the time, decided they were going to take a later flight and they were going to come to the game. So I had to scramble to get them tickets. So, I can relate to Paul there where it's like, man, I wanted to show these people something special and we're about to get taken apart. But then, at the end of it, there's just that iconic picture of Pat Onstad saving that shot from Jay Heaps and his big giant hand holding that ball up like it was nothing. And I'm thinking, oh man, I have little hands, huh? But I look back at it and I can say of the 4 MLS Cups that I was fortunate enough to win, I owe them all to Canadians. Dwayne De Rosario in 2001, Pat in 2003, Pat in 2006, Dwayne in 2007 at RFK. So I'm indebted to Canadians for the rest of my life.
So, Paul, I'm going to take it to you because I remember going into the locker room after the game. The scene was absolute pandemonium. I mean, you couldn't squeeze any more people in there. It was just an incredible celebration. And here's your father there, the legendary Liverpool player. I mean, you coming from such a illustrious family when it comes to football in the history of the game. Just tell me what's kind of going through your mind and recollect that moment being in there and how you felt. And was this the greatest footballing moment for you in your career?
For sure. It was the most important because they can never take it away from you, Glenn. No matter what you ever do in your career, no one can ever take that trophy away from you. It played because you're part. It only matters you've got that ring at the end of your career. And I remember sitting in that dressing room that day and sharing the moment with my mum and dad. You don't get that in England. So when my dad ever won anything, the families aren't in the locker room. That's an American thing. And someone sent over for them to come into the locker room, and all the other families are in there, and they got to share it. I mean, the biggest moment of my career, and I share it with. It doesn't get any more special than that. And I remember my dad saying, he said to my mum, my dad didn't tell me because he wouldn't, but my mum said, my dad was crying when we won the game, and he said to mum, he said, look, I've been lucky enough to win quite a lot in my career, but that's the best I've ever felt in football. So it was nice to see that it meant something to. Yeah, it was nice to see that it meant something to. But it was incredible, but also my dad. It was a bit bittersweet for my dad as well because he was, obviously, him and Steve were very good friends when they played together at Liverpool, and obviously he was devastated after the game from losing another final as well. So he came in with me all happy, and then got brought back down to earth when he went to see Steve Nicol afterwards.
Yeah, incredible story. So that's 2006. Dynamo win the Cup, huge celebration back in Houston. 5,000 fans come out to City Hall. You got every politician in the city jumping on the bandwagon. It was incredible. Everybody going nuts. It would again be New England in 2007. And this time at RFK Stadium. And Paul, I'm going to go to you and then Eddie, because I don't want to do this hour without talking about how influential and important Dwayne De Rosario was to this soccer team. So I'll start with you, Paul, and just give you an open forum.
Yeah, I was that. So listen, I played on the 2006 team, obviously a big part of the end of the season, played all the way through the playoffs. The 2007 team was funny. If we've got time at the end, I'll tell you how I got injured. But I was out for the whole season. And I got back just in time for the playoffs. And I was on the bench for the game. So I was injured more or less the whole year. And I watched that team from the press box. I used to watch it by you, Glenn, because I was up there. You were doing the commentary. I was watching it. That team was better than the team I played on in 2006. It was the emergence of Stuart Holden, him and Ricardo Clark in midfield. And then Dwayne De Rosario started playing underneath Ching at times. And I mean, there was an emergence of Joseph Ngwenya played some games. But we had everybody available. And we had Ricardo Clark and Stuart Holden in the middle of the pitch with Brad Davis and Brian Mullen, Dero underneath, and then Ching up front. I mean, it was incredible. That was an incredible team to watch because Stuart had so much energy, Rico had so much energy, Dwayne had so much energy. And now all of a sudden, Dwayne didn't have to do as much defensive work when he was playing underneath. And I think in the final, Ngwenya actually scored. But some of the football we played when it was Dero underneath Ching was absolutely incredible. And Eddie can tell you that team that year was about as good a Dynamo team as I've seen, and Dwayne was a big part of it. But the funny thing about Dwayne is Dwayne could do things in the training ground where you'd go, I've never seen anybody do that before. A good and a bad way. He was the most. He was the best and the worst player in the same training session at times, because listen, he was incredible, totally unique talent, total street baller. Just could do things where you went, how did he do that? How did he do that? He was incredible. But Eddie will tell you he was so unorthodox, but he could do incredible things, and he's definitely, without doubt, one of the most iconic players to ever play in MLS.
Yeah, I mean, I easily put him in the top 3 in the history of the league, right? I sometimes, Eddie, don't think he gets, to tag on to what Paul says, I don't think he gets the credit. I know he does from you guys. I know he does in Houston. But I think overall, in the history of the league, I don't think he gets the credit he deserves.
Well, I mean, it's funny because just being able, as Paul said, to be around him every single day and see some of the crap that he pulled off, and you're like, wait a minute, I would never even think of something like that. But then, I think back to, we were playing a home game in CONCACAF Champions League against a small club. I don't remember what team it was, but I think the game was tied and we needed to win to move on. And Dwayne came on late in the game and scored a ridiculous goal. And I don't remember who I was sitting beside, but I just looked at him and I'm like, this guy, he just does it when it needs to be done. And I look back at that 2007 game against New England, and I think to myself, first of all, we went down, I believe 1-0, and then, as Paul said, Joe Nguyen scores. But then the second goal, the game-winning goal, I'm surprised. What's that? Yeah. I'm surprised Brad Davis served the ball from where he did. I'm surprised that Dwayne decided to head the ball from where he did and that it beat Matt Reese. I couldn't believe it. We were playing a 3-5-2. We were notoriously 4-4-2 all the time. Yeah. I'll tell you what, go back and look. You want to see textbook 4-4-2, especially from the wide midfielders defending in the midfield? We are textbook, and allowing our outside backs to get forward, textbook. But that game, we were playing 3-5-2. So when we scored that second goal, Dominic Kinnear yells onto the field, let's go back to 4-4-2. And we were like, no, we're absolutely destroying them right now. Let's stay where we're at. Let's keep doing what we're doing.
You changed the coach's mind. You changed the
We all did. We all said no. All of us. We said, no, Dom, let's stay with what we're doing. And Dom's like, okay, fine. Okay,
so, Eddie, let me just, I'm going to give it back to you, but let me just stop there just for the context. So you guys were in a 4-4-2. You went into the 3-5-2, I believe, in the second half, right? Pushing Wade into midfield to match their 5 in midfield. Okay, so go ahead. This is RFK Stadium. This is 2007. It's the MLS Cup final. Again, it's a rematch between the Dynamo and New England. By the way, the Dynamo again without Ricardo Clark. The Dynamo also without Brian Ching. Also without Paul Dalglish. So there's a lot of dynamics that we don't have all the time to get into here. But to just, again, show you the ability to overcome things that your team had. So carry on, Eddie.
Yeah, so as soon as we get back into our half of the field after that second goal, Dom's over there saying, 4-4-2, let's go back to it. And we're like, no, let's stay where we're at, because I feel like mentally that would put us in a place where, okay, we can take our foot off the gas and we can relax, which would be a bad idea. And so we stayed in that 3-5-2. New England started putting the pressure on. And eventually, I believe, I don't know if it was a corner kick or what, but I do remember a cross coming in and Jeff Laurentowicz heading the ball from 3 yards out. And I'm not marking him, but I turn around and I see him and I kick him as hard as I can in his leg, as hard as I can as he heads the ball. And thankfully, Pat Onstad saves it. I think Laurentowicz actually had to come off because he was injured, but I just kicked him as hard as I could because I didn't care. But it was just a combination of attitude and fight and desire, and we were always that team. We had Dwayne De Rosario, we had Stuart Holden, who went on to be, great in the Premier League, and we had Dwayne De Rosario, but we were just a team and a group of guys. We were going to kick you in the mouth and score some goals while we were doing it. And that's what I think I take the most pride in, is we were probably the most blue collar team that you're ever going to come across. And I think Paul will tell you, I mean, even training sessions, that we get in fistfights sometimes in training sessions because we cared so much about winning. Okay, whatever.
I saw a few things down there. I saw a few things down there that a lot of people didn't see because I happened to be the only guy down there a few times. But the training sessions were absolutely epic and intense as they possibly could be. So here's the starting lineup in that game, 2007. Pat Onset. So the only things that really changed, you got Weibel again. It's Cochran and Robinson in the middle, Barrett on the left. But a guy we haven't mentioned, Richard Mulrooney, came to the team in 2007 and became a really big piece of it. Paul, Eddie, comment on Richard Mulrooney.
Well, Richard was part of the team in San Jose, and then he was traded to Dallas, and I remember him coming back to Houston in preseason, and that was huge. Richard was an amazing guy. He was a roommate of mine for quite a while, and I still keep in touch with him, but fantastic player. Again, another blue-collar guy.
Coaching Memphis in college right now. Paul, go ahead.
He was a lovely, like, you couldn't not like Richard Mulrooney. You know, he's just I've never heard him have a bad word to say about anybody. He really was just one of the nicest guys you could meet. But a really good player. And what he actually did was he played quite a bit of right back that year, I remember, as well. I think because did Weibel get injured? Because Weibel left out or something?
Yeah.
But Richard Mulrooney played quite a bit of that season at right back. And he was, you know, and then I think finally played in midfield. But having that ability to play really well in both positions was a huge, huge benefit to us.
And remember, it was Joseph Nguyen and Nate Jakwa up front with Brian Ching not available. You know, some people were looking at it. Remember this in New England. Oh, you know, this is our year. You know, Ching's out and there's no Ricardo Clark. And, you know, it's Jakwa and Nguyen up front. And Nguyen gets one of the goals on the second try, which was a huge goal. But this really was Dwayne De Rosario's final, right, Eddie?
Yeah.
I mean, again, you know, I go back to, you know, what Paul was saying. He just did things that you didn't expect, that you never thought of. And it was just, the guy's just a big time player. And even after he left the Dynamo, you know, when he was with DC and with Toronto, I mean, just the legend of Dwayne De Rosario just grew even more. But, you know, even to this day, the one thing that you can say about every player that you've mentioned, that we've mentioned in this, 48 minutes, they're good people. They're people that you want to be around. They're people that you want to stay in touch with. They're just good people. And I think that's what makes a good team. When you have a group of just good people that you can trust, that you can count on, that you know are going to fight the same way that you're going to fight, no matter if it's me, I'm a big donkey who just kicks the crap out of people, or it's Dwayne De Rosario who's scoring all these ridiculous goals. We're all still fighting at the same rate. So there's not enough good things you can say about him.
He was the most unconventional superstar, wasn't he? He was the most unconventional superstar. You know, even his personality off the pitch. You know, I remember when it came in, he's got this. I mean, we called him Borat because his hair and he looked like Borat in the movie. So we actually had a party for Halloween, and he turned up dressed as Borat. High five! He's brilliant. But he didn't. The best thing about Dwayne was he was one of, if not the best players in the league. But off the field, he was funny. Like he didn't act like a superstar. He had no ego whatsoever, and he was just really, really good fun to be around. He's a good dude, D-Rup. But that's the thing, Eddie. You're saying everyone. You know, it was good guys, but everyone was so different. I mean, I could not be any more different from Wade Barrett. You know, D-Rup could not be any more different than you know? And then we had Pat Yarney. You know, we had Pat Yarney that was a completely different. You know, Mike Zavala, people like that. But it was what happened, Glenn, was you always had something to talk about because everybody was so different. And I don't, as I said, we weren't all great friends, but we all 100% respected each other.
But I love the point you're bringing up, Paul, because the personalities made it so much fun. I mean, even for me, simply as a commentator, the differing personalities were just fascinating to me. And you know, I did feel a bit of a brethren with you guys, because I still felt, you know, MLS wasn't where it is now, you know, with infrastructure, with publicity, with technology, with all the things that, you know, you guys may even look at now and go, wow, this is completely different from when I was playing. Well, you can imagine from what it was like in the 80s, but to see all you guys and the commitment you made to the community and the fans and to the game, it just was a wonderful thing to be a part of, even as a commentator. And I would go back to Dwayne, and I would say this to you, Paul, as eclectic as he was, to your comment about him in training, wasn't it the perfect framework of a team to have that kind of centerpiece, you know, based on a lot of the other disciplines that team had in the 4-4-2?
Yeah, no, he was, and it was funny because him and Ricardo were so athletic. We actually played a diamond with wingers, you know. So Brad Davis would tuck in a little bit, but Brian Mullen would play very wide on the right hand side, and because of the athleticism, so it was actually a lot of running to play as a forward in that team, because you had to track back. Like sometimes Dwayne would run past you, and then Ching used to do a really good job of filling in for him and tracking back. And there was but it's testament to Dwayne played as a number 10 that ran in behind, but we never got overrun in midfield because of his energy and Ricardo Clark's energy. You know, Brian Mullen, and then it was funny. It's funny when you look at it, we just all suited each other. You know, it was the guys that had played with each other for so many times. Like Weibel wasn't as athletic as Wade Barrett, so Weibel would stay at home a little bit more while Brian Mullen would give us width. So they were a brilliant partnership on that right hand side. Ricardo Clark in the middle with Dwayne De Rosario. Ricardo liked to sit. Dwayne ran on. They were a brilliant partnership without us really working on too much tactically. The recruitment was perfect because they suited each other. And then the same with Wade, could run for days, and then Brad would drift inside. So it was just the player profiles just worked. And it was, do you know where I think you saw who we were, Glenn? Probably the game that summed up who we were really was, do you remember the series against Pachuca in 07, Eddie, where we beat them at Robertson?
Oh, the one with we finished with 9? Is that the one where we had 2 red cards?
That might have been a couple of years later. I got punched in the back of head by, was it the Mosquera? Was it the centre back that went to play in Spain? We beat them 2. I think Wando scored. Wando might have scored
2-0.
And that's the thing that people
2-0.
Yeah, forget about that.
Wando did score that day.
But that's what people forget. Our depth was Wando. You know, and I remember Eddie at the time. I'm thinking, this guy's a good player. He needs to be playing somewhere. And you know, he was a little bit unlucky, Wando, because there was veterans in front of him. But like Wando was a huge reason that pushed the other forwards as well, because you knew if you took one step off, there was a kid here that was scoring every single game in the reserves that was going to take your place, and that definitely kept you on your toes. But the character that the team showed when we went to Pachuca made me think this is a special team. Although we got beat, that was the best team I've ever. That was the biggest mismatch I've ever been on the team against. The team in Pachuca, and we nearly did it, Glenn. We nearly beat the Mexican champions over 2.
Well, you remember? Do you remember that Chingy had an opportunity, a header at the end, that if he scores, we're going through, and I would have put my house on it. I would have bet everything in my life, right? And I tell this story about Wando all the time, huh?
And then it went to extra time. I remember, right? Yeah. I remember. So we beat 2-0 at home, and Dominic says to me, he says, Paul, he goes, I'm going to go with 5 in midfield, away from home to try and keep it a little bit more locked up defense. I went, Dom, totally understand. Away from home, totally understand. We were 2-0 down after like 5 or something, and I'm telling you,
right off.
They went 4-2-4, and they just went woomph. and they just attacked us. The stadium was full. They made it like a fan appreciation night where they made it free for the fans. So for warm-ups, the stadium was full and it was bouncing, and it's higher than Mexico City, Pachuca. And I remember sitting on this is funny. I remember sitting on the bench, right? And their left winger, Paul Weibel, their left winger, absolutely tortured Weibel. And so I'm sitting on the bench. Weibel gets taken off. And I'm sitting on the bench and I'm sitting like that. And I don't want to look at Weibel because I can see he's just been in a tough game. I'm looking and I'm waiting for him to look at me. And he looked and he just starts laughing. He goes, I know, he says, but I'm not even tired. I couldn't even get near him to work hard to get tired. He was that good. And they were just that good. We're laughing. And then I'm laughing on the bench, and then Dom turns around and he says, get warmed up, you're going on. I was like, oh no, I'm going on as well. But that team was brilliant, Eddie.
Oh, they were amazing. They were absolutely amazing. I remember that goal that they scored in overtime, and it ended up 5-4 on aggregate. Yeah. I remember after the game just saying to the guy, I was like, "Okay, golazo," and he even turned around and was like, he couldn't even believe it. But we pushed them to the brink, and that was the thing. Again, it wasn't because we were the best team. It wasn't because we had the best quality. It was because we were just fighters. We were a-holes, and that's
all right.
What I take pride in.
We got about 3 minutes left, and I want to make sure that I give both you guys an opportunity to really kind of just encapsulate these 2 cup years. And by the way, Paul, thanks for bringing up Pachuca, because I think apart from the 2 cups, that's the most indelible moment that remains with the fans, that series with Pachuca. And those games went a long way in gaining respect against Liga MX teams. So, Eddie, I'll start with you, and then we'll finish with Paul. Eddie, just take a minute or so and just kind of encapsulate the 2 cup years and what it has meant to you personally in your life.
I don't know that I fully can. The older you get in life, the more perspective you gain because you have life experience, and you can't have perspective without life experience. And for all the years that I went through playing, and, I missed 2 years throughout my career, 11-year career for injury, missed playoff games, frustration, this and that. But I look back at all of it and I think about how lucky I was to be a part of this group, and how important it was that every single player was a part of that group, and how great of a job I think that Dominic Kinnear did putting this group together and, putting soccer on the map in Houston. Even FC Dallas, they were never really that good. They've never won a championship, and we won our first 2. But I think the biggest thing that stands out for me was the chip on our shoulders when we came to Houston. When we left, the first time we went back to San Jose, we were treated awful by the fans, the fan base that we fought so hard for years. And so from that point on, we played with a chip on our shoulder, and I think it showed.
Paul?
Yeah, for me, the biggest takeaway for me is like it's bittersweet for me, because it was the highlight of my career, and obviously getting injured, and then it really ended my career was a real low for me as well. But the thing that I'll always take away from that team, and I think we touched on it a little bit earlier, was just the intensity in training. I think that every player that came to Houston got better because of the training environment. And I think if you look at the trades that we made, we picked up players that maybe weren't great at other clubs, but came into our environment. And people would say all the time when they came in, I can't believe you guys train this hard. And we were like, well, that's what we do. We weren't under any kind of false pretenses that we were a great team in terms of talent. You mentioned the Chivas team earlier. They were really good. The New England team that we played against in 06, 07, they were really good as well. You've got the Beckham team at LA with Landon and Beckham as well. There were some really good teams. There was only 12 teams, so it was condensed. We knew who we were. We knew exactly who we were. And Dom knew exactly who we were. And he trained us. We knew what we were going to do on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every week. We knew what the session was. But every single part of that, every single training session we did was an intensity that set us up to play to extra time in a final at the end of the year. And it's the training environment that I'll take away more than anything as I go on my coaching journey. That you've got to have players, but you've got to have that environment where it is dog eat dog every single day and holding each other accountable.
And Paul, I'm glad you finished up with that, because I think we'd be remiss not to mention a little bit more the influence Dominic Kinnear had, how he engineered the move to Houston from San Jose, and of course his leadership I think was off the charts in those early years with you guys. So I'm glad you mentioned Dom, because we probably should have talked a little bit more about him in this. But there's an awful lot of guys we didn't get to mention. We only had an hour. We could probably go on a lot longer. Guys, it was great visiting with both of you. I mean, the guy on the bottom, I see him a lot, Paul, so it was more fun seeing you, Paul, today, because I don't get to see you very much. And I want to wish you the best of luck with your coaching career as you continue on with Miami FC. Eddie, cook that steak, sear it on the outside, red on the inside tonight. I'll see you in the TV booth down the road. And for everybody who might have listened in tonight, you heard it from Paul Dalglish and Eddie Robinson. No two better guys. All right. I think that does it for this.
Look forward to seeing you, Glenn. Paulie, as always, good to see you, brother.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Texas's workforce. They teach us. They inspire us. They take us to new heights. They make the things that make our lives better and open doors to a brighter tomorrow. These aren't just workers doing a job. They're people doing a job well. They keep Texas running, and that matters to you, and it matters to us. We're Texas Mutual Insurance Company, the state's #1 workers' comp provider. Every day, we're on the job with 1.5 million Texas workers. And every day, we have the same goal, getting each and every one of them home safe to their families. With safety resources, training technologies, dividends, and a total commitment to service, Texas Mutual is changing the way workers' comp works for you.